Hi guys, I wanted to show off some of the new features of Midicake ARP. What you're looking at is the prototype. This thing's getting a bit beaten up now because I've used it so much, but it's what we've got. So first I wanted to show you the changes that have been made to the chord selections. Previously the chords were set laid out like this, so you had 7 chord buttons and a scale button, and the scale button allows you to choose from a predefined scale. But that's been kind of amalgamated now. We have 8 chord buttons, and each of them have the same functionality. If you, I've got a little sequence going on ARP1 here. It's just a 6-step sequence. If I press and hold the first chord button, you see it defaults to major, and we can cycle through a predefined list of chords. Pick something like that, and we can still change to the other chords as we were. So this will take us to the min key, min chord, and back to our 6-add-9 chord. Right down at the bottom of the list we have a bunch of scales that you saw before, so just a chromatic scale for example. And to reset that, press and hold and hit the reset button. We can still edit the chords manually and create our own chords simply by toggling the note buttons and selecting which of the notes should be active in creating the sequence. And again we can reset that by hitting the reset button. In addition, I've made some changes to the way the external chord synchronization works. So I've got it hooked up to an external keyboard here. Previously, the way it operated was it would choose the root note from the lowest note within the middle octave range, and it just made sense to me at the time when I first developed it. But I've used this for about a year now, and it just didn't seem an intuitive way of interacting with it and understanding what was going on. And I played with some ideas and came up with the idea of using the lowest note as the defining position for the root note. And it made much more sense to me when I was playing it, and I think it's far more intuitive. So the way that works is, we'll get the sequence going again. If I play C, you see it's jumped to free play. If I change the position of the C chord, the root note becomes E because that's the lowest note within that middle range. Sorry, I let go too soon. So I changed to E again. And up to G, again, all makes perfect sense. But as soon as you go outside of that middle range, it would have kept the root note as C because that's the lowest note that's being played. But now with this change, if you go outside of range, say 2nd position or major C, you see G becomes the root note. And again, if you go out above it, so it will follow the octave range of wherever you're playing on the keyboard. So let's have a look at some of the other settings. If I go into set mode, we have it's labeled dynamics here, but the rhythm patterns. If I set the chord going, you'll hear what's happening here. So the rhythm patterns affect the velocity or volume of each individual step. There are 16 default patterns, and each of them affect the volume of each individual step. We can also change the length of the pattern up to the total of 16 steps. So we can also edit these patterns. So if I press the program button, we can use the rotary control to select which step we want to change the volume of, and we can use the up and down buttons to increase or lower the volume. If we hit maximum and go 1 higher, it'll actually tie the note to the previous step, and so you can create some held notes in that way. And so mutes, accents, ties, etc. can all be done through this. There are 16 patterns, like I said, but those 16 patterns are specific to each bank. In the new version there will be 16 banks, and each containing 12 patches. So that gives you 16 different projects, if you like, and each individual project would share that specific set of patterns. And it just means that tying patches together is much more straightforward. Let me modify my pattern back. And so it's the same with groove patterns. If I go into groove and change the pattern, you can hear now, instead of the volume, the timing of the note being affected. And we end up with some kind of swung effects, if you like. Effects I think you've seen before. We'll add a little bit of humanize just to change up the velocity and gate. And then we've got two modulators. Now the modulators, just stop it for a minute while I'm talking. The modulators can affect any of the settings that are used to create the sequence. And so I've got it on steps. Let's run through them: velocity, gate, octave, note, octave time division, etc., etc. The only things that haven't been covered at this point in time is actually modulating the modulators and also modulating the dynamics and rhythm groove patterns. The lengths you can, but the patterns you can't at the moment, but that's something I'm planning to add. Let's set it to steps and take a look at what it does. So as well as setting the target, you can set the shape. So this is the pattern by which the modulation will run over time. So on a sine wave, and that time is defined by the rate. So the rate can run from a complete cycle of modulation in a quarter of a bar right up to 32 bars. Set it back to 4. And it's applied by the amount of modulation you want to include. So if it's playing, so remember we're modulating the number of steps. And we can push it right up and get some crazy stuff. Let's leave it on 30% at the moment. Now the way that's applied is actually against the value that is set on the setting itself. So if we go to that setting and have a look at its base value at 6, if we were to lower that down to 1 step, the modulation would run from that point. And if it drops below the minimum value for that setting, then it just stays at the lowest value. And likewise at the top, if you put it to its highest value and it goes above, then it's just limited to that top value. The reason you're hearing it stopping playing there is because we're going out of audio range. So let's put all that together now and see what it sounds like. I'm going to bring in the second arpeggiator, which is just a 2-note sequence that's going to run as the bass. And I'm going to pick a chord to start with. Let's bring in that third arpeggiator.